everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Rise Up, Voices from the Frontlines. And today I'm bringing to you a guest who is a fire captain, Andrew Meier. And I want to give you guys a little bit of a heads up that this episode is likely to get very colorful. We're going to talk about topics that might make some of you uncomfortable, because not only will we be talking about the experience of a first responder lifestyle and what we go through in that, we're actually going to talk a little bit about the connection between childhood abuse and childhood adverse experiences and outcomes of post-traumatic stress disorders. So again, just to give you a heads up that if you're uncomfortable with really candid conversation, and perhaps some graphic detail, that this may not be the episode for you. But please welcome Andrew to the show. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I am wonderful. And it's so awesome having you here, because you're one of the people that lately, when I've had a conversation with, we could just go on for hours. There's so much so much content and so many different topics that we can play with. We might have to have you on again.
Okay.
And you have, despite all of your experiences and the struggles that you've gone through, you have a very joyful, very vibrant demeanor that is very pleasant to have conversation with.
Eventually it does come out. But I will admit, and I think many people can relate to this, that there are times where my jovial attitude or that presence is also a mask. A lot of times when I am nervous or more insecure, that tends to be my fallback. So the louder I am and the happier and laid back I seem to be in the beginning usually stems from that kind of insecurity.
That's a normal trait for first responders. That's using comedic relief to offset some of that energy, some of the fear, or some of the guilt or shame or sadness. Do you find that you fall onto that dark humor platform regularly?
Yes. But again, like you just said, it's the way that we cope with things. It's the way that we handle things. There are comments and actions and attitudes that sitting around the firehouse table or sitting around, barracks or in the mess hall, that you definitely would not have these conversations at a red hat business meeting or at a local government town hall kind of setting. Using comments such as going to a call where somebody has tried to commit suicide or did, and it's really kind of messed everybody up, and they're all kind of on edge, and there's that deep dark quiet, and somebody breaks the ice comment with saying, that guy really looked like Chunk from the Goonies there at the end. Completely inappropriate and horrible and out of place. But then it gets the four people involved on the call laughing. Then it gets them talking. Then it actually gets them to relax a little bit. And maybe that little bit's enough to get them by for the next day, or for the rest of the shift. So, yeah. But yes, use that kind of humor and attitude a lot. We'll modestly admit, yeah, that's what happens. So,
have you ever had a moment that you said something and someone overheard you?
Yes, I've had both the negative and the lighthearted way of those. I've had the negative where we were awaiting the police and the rest of the EMS side supervisors to take care of an obvious deceased subject. We were having a completely different conversation about something else, where we then had a giggle or whatever, and one of the residents was home and uh, got rather upset that we had made a comment, or that we were laughing. Didn't know what the context was, but it felt that we were laughing at their situation, and that makes sense. And yes, I really wished we had been quieter or been somewhere else, because it was our way of, this sounds completely horrible, but passing the time while we were waiting. But that way we were not getting ourselves completely engrossed in a situation where it would be bad, for us. So yeah, so that's a negative one, where somebody hurt us. Um, but I've also done the silly. I in one of my part time works, somebody came to me and they asked me where the stairs were to get down to the performing floor, and they had two beers in their hand. Or no, they asked me where the elevator was to get down to the performing floor. They had two beers in their hand, and so I just kind of glanced and I said, "Why?" I said, "You afraid you're going to walk down the stairs and spill your beers?" And then she went like this, and I turned and looked, and her friend was in a wheelchair. So very, very quickly apologized, said that it was not, about the whole thing, not meant to be an insult. It did not represent the facility or anybody else. And the more that I am trying to dig out of the hole, the louder their laughter gets. And they thought it was completely hysterical, especially watching me squirm. So not only did I show them how to get there, I actually escorted them all the way down to their seats. So so it can yes, it can backfire on us in a humorous and in a not
Not
so
so
pleasant.
humorous. Yeah, it's very funny. I don't often banter about stories, but the one experience that pops into my mind from this whole humor context was a coworker of mine, and we had just gotten back from a scene, and it was a, a gunshot wound, self-inflicted, and it was a mess. Of course, it was a disaster. And she makes spaghettios, and she's like, and she made a totally inappropriate joke about, you know, feeling hungry.
Oh,
And like the whole room, like it took all of the, it sounds horrible, but ultimately it took everybody's mind off of the situation, and how, everyone was sitting there quiet and, in their own headspace and kind of staring at the table, just being uh, that awkward, like, waiting for something to happen silence. And that, as disgusting as it was, and obviously it stuck in my head because that was years ago, it was totally inappropriate, but everybody laughed, and then everybody went back to normal functioning. So it literally is, as if you don't know, you'll never know and you'll never understand. But as awkward as it sounds, it's so crucial to mental health.
well, I think that also is another reason why we struggle with uh, the suicides and harm, not only in public safety, but also in military as well. Take the first step out of it. The whole, oh, it was not, you didn't say anything. You got to be macho. You got to keep it into yourself or whatever. Finally, getting past that a little bit, telling everybody it's okay to not be okay. We're encouraging them to come out and speak, and that's great. And that has worked, and that has started helping people. But then the other part of that comes into play, where okay, but we're a little inappropriate to the normal world. We we handle it differently, we talk differently, and we do things differently to do our coping. Well, if you're going to send me somewhere to talk, and all of a sudden I can't be myself. I can't act the way that I do, that I know how to be to express myself. Well, now I'm not going to talk there, or I'm not going to seek out the help because you're sending me to, you know, you know, Joe's therapy session, that, you know, before this, he was tending to somebody who uh, couldn't keep a potted plant alive, and they were distraught about it. And now, but they were in a nice, pleasant conversation, and now we come in being very raw and very emotional, and it puts them, they're almost scared to talk to us. So I think that's another reason why we don't see the numbers go towards getting help that they should. And I think that's
Cultural competence.
Mhm.
It's a huge conversation right now because there's a lot of therapists and every level counselors that see the movement towards first responder mental wellness as a gold mine.
Mhm.
They want to profit on that because obviously there's a massive need. So
Yeah.
hey, I can fill my entire clientele, but going to a weekend class on firefighter culture
Mhm.
is not going to make you understand firefighter culture.
No.
If
Uh,
you don't spend time in the firehouse, if you don't talk to people regularly and go on that police ride along and spend a weekend, at least a weekend, volunteering in an emergency room, you won't understand. You have to see the things, you have to experience the things, you have to recognize that it's not just visual, that there's literally somatic body responses. It's what you see, it's what you smell, it's what you hear, it's location associations. And I love the way you said that so much, that everyone's saying talk, everyone's saying you need to speak your mind and you need to get help, you need to ask for help. But when you ask for help and they say, hey, we want to hear from you, we want to hear you and see you and recognize you and understand you, but then they say, whoa, but you can't speak that way, but
right.
you can't cope that way, you can't heal that way, because that's not what we think is the right way for you, that's not what our textbook says.
Exactly. Yeah, that's not what the educationally informed, but not the street informed people say. And and since you brought up, kind of the views of what people think, the perception of it, I'll go back to saying also, and I love to rant on this negatively, so I'll do it quickly and get off of it. Uh, it's the damn television shows. I know it makes me sound like an old guy standing over here talking, but no, it is. It's your make believe damn TV shows. Your and I'll tongue in cheek. I know what the titles, but I'm mixing them up. Your Chicago Station, your Fire 19, all these other nonsense things on TV that, even though, there's drama in this and that, everything from their technical and uh, the visual inaccuracies to their wild and totally unbelievable, and I mean unbelievable as in there's no way in hell it would ever happen, topics and everything like that, gives people an impression of what they think our life is like, or what they think we do, or what they think, how they think things go. I'm a child of the fire service, so I remember when Backdraft came out, and then
Mm,
every time you ran into somebody, oh, have you seen Backdraft? Have you seen Backdraft? I'm like, and the guys before me, and my father and them, it was, have you seen Towering Inferno, and this and that, or do you see Hellfighters with John Wayne, and you know, but everybody had got this impression that that's what life was like, and it's a very unpopular opinion for some. Especially some of my relatives who were disgusted by it. But the only thing that I ever felt was truly, really accurate, well, not regrettably, but terribly accurate, was Rescue Me with Dennis Leary, because of the situations that the characters in the show faced outside of work. There was gambling, there was drug addiction, there was sex, there was you know uh, tragedies and everything else. That is the life that people don't see, and it actually was the first one to ever really focus on that. they kind of was, hey, this really does kind of fit what we see and what goes on. I hear people rant and rave about how it made firefighters look so bad, and I'm over here going, you have no idea that's really what it's like. You know, going around the room and going, no, that one just blew his last paycheck, and that one probably shouldn't, be coming to work, and you know, that one, has one girl coming in the front door while the other one's going out the back door. It's those kind of things. Um, but no, we're not allowed to talk about those. We're not allowed to show that. We're supposed to be extraordinarily lived in life. You know, so
I think that juxtaposition is really interesting too. The way those shows often portray firefighters is pretty much your everyday good boy, your hero, you're like that inadvertently, accidentally falls into some kind of drama cycle, but it's not his fault. He wasn't flirting with the girl. It's this innocent caricature.
yes, he didn't mean to, but he walked and slipped on the banana and made her pregnant when he tripped into her. Yeah.
Right, that whole kind of thing. And when you look at the way police officers are portrayed, um, it's much more static with regards to are they good guys or bad guys. It kind of leaves it to that. Well, you could take this two different ways. They're not really made to look particularly good. They're not really made to look particularly bad in the movies.
Mhm.
Then you go to well, also there's often the corrupt cop. There's almost always a corrupt cop, right? But then you go to the media and the firefighters aren't mentioned and the police officers are all evil and horrible people who are doing terrible things. So the media has kind of forgotten, has kind of left you guys out. For the
No,
most
and
part.
that's very true. I mean, so what they do is they have a dash cam of a cop getting in a fight with somebody, and they are battling for their life on the ground with this person, or they're protecting themselves and they tase somebody or this and that. Now all of a sudden they have done so much wrong, they have done so much evil, but they don't talk about, and this is just loosely based, this is not stating anybody or anything could happen anywhere. They're not talking about we'll start, the paramedic who's pocketing the half a vial of morphine when they're done. They're not talking about the firemen who said that they were on duty that day but took a day off because they're at the beach with their mistress, or with one of the other firemen's wives somewhere else. Or the doctor who's using hand out his script pad and writing stuff down, or putting it in for somebody else, or whatever. We focus on what is put in front of us by the media right away with something, and that's what that is. We don't we see, oh, dash cam, something going on, it must be the case. Well, two sides to every story,
Right.
and somewhere in the middle is the truth. So
And you take 10 seconds out of a 6-minute video and take it completely out of context and
yeah.
there's your experience.
Mhm.
It's very interesting. Have you noticed, because you're in leadership, have you noticed that society, that culture at this point in time, do you feel like being a firefighter is perceived in a different way than it used to be?
Well, I started out as a small town fireman, community oriented, and we were on a pedestal. Even then we were. This was in the '90s. We were revered. We were, I want to say, worship, but we were loved and glorified, and we earned that. We acted in appropriate ways to be that way. 9/11 happened, and there was that huge outpouring of firefighter love, both from the public and your leadership in terms of the municipalities, and budgets. Oh, we're going to get you whatever you want. We're going to get you guys whatever you need. You deserve the best. We're going to get it for you. The everybody coming by, the hero worship, really. Um, after that, and it didn't matter whether you were FDNY or you were, Elk Idaho Volunteer Fire Department, population 3. It didn't matter. Um, and there was an expectation to live up to that. But then, as time's gone by, people have forgotten that they have changed their attitude. They have, you know, out of sight, out of mind. You know, they'll be the first ones to honk their horn, cut us off, or get in, not let us in, or block us from trying to get out of the firehouse onto the road. And will flip us off when they're driving. This and that. It's their world. We're just trying to save it. But yet, then we go to a call at their house or at their business, or we save them somewhere else, and they can't think it's enough. They love us. So it's like you can't have it both ways. You can't hate us and love us at the same time. But that's the realm we fall into, and I think you see it in all aspects. Growing up, parents voted yes for school bonds because they wanted their kids to have good stuff. Who didn't? The old people who didn't have kids in school anymore were on a fixed income and didn't want to pay taxes. But guess what? 30 years earlier, they would have said yes. Now they say no. Um, Military, something happens. Yes, we want to fund them. We thank you for your service. We appreciate it. We're going to get you the newest tech and we're going to do this and that. Election year's coming up. My constituents don't like it. And there's some anti feeling. No, no, we really cannot afford to feed the war machine anymore. We've got to cut back. And that's the kind of thing. It's situational. So I think that's something that I see and then it leads into another issue. So that's kind of how us old hats kind of see things, the way that the people are. But now you have this younger generation coming in who's never experienced any of it. It is completely new. So are they going to be subject to the same iterations? Are they going to react the same way? Are they going to say, "Hey, you're right. Let me, I shall put down my sword and pick up a plowshare." Are they going to? How are they going to, handle it and react to it as well?
That's a really challenging question right now because I've talked to a number of leaders in the law enforcement environment who are, I'm going to use the word terrified. Their word is generally concerned, but the reality is that if we don't solve the problem, we're not going to have a police force. So, so what we're coming up against is this new generation is wanting to change the entire way things work to a softer, more relational, kinder, more relationship based problem solving model. And yet they're challenged at situational awareness and problem solving strategy. So, with the two together, they want everyone to get along, but they don't have the skills necessary to create that outcome. What's going to happen? Are you noticing kind of a shift in that, like strategic problem solving ability as opposed to relational? Uh, pa- I'm going to use this word and people are going to hate me for using this word, but almost a passivism that's kind of generally an overtone of passivism.
You're correct. And anybody that has a problem with Krista using the word pacifism, I'll take you out in the backyard and I'll beat the shit out of you. So don't give her any crap for this because you know I will stop being passive and whip your ass. So yes, you are exactly right. We in my area, they have actually started a program where they dispatch a mental health provider to aid on some of the calls or to be the only responder. Now, whether that's from an EMS standpoint, a police standpoint, they do that. Uh, and yes, I think there needs to be more training because the world is changing. The world is complex. This is not the world that that Washington and Adams had developed with the Constitution. This is not the world that Lincoln had, post Reconstruction. This is, from the Civil War. This is not what Roosevelt envisioned with the New Deal. This is different. Every generation it's gone differently, but the fundamentals are still the same. People still need help. There will be people that will need help, but there are also people out there that want to do evil and that just want to watch the world burn. So we fall into that pacifism, as you put it, and trying to deal with everybody. And the person that you're going to, they're not exactly going to listen to that or respond in kind, and they're going to continue with their violence, and they're going to continue with their action and all that. And because we have now hamstrung the response to this, now we put people in trouble. It was ironic. We actually were watching a movie at the firehouse the other day, an older beat up, rather B-level action movie, Demolition Man, with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. They're cops of the night, cop of the '90s, bad guy of the '90s, get frozen, become the future later. But in the future, everything is different. So everything is peace. The police do not carry guns. If you swear, you get a violation ticket, this and that. I mean, hell, even having sex, they don't even touch each other. They sit across from each other with a headset on, like VR goggles, and you're supposed to get off wearing that. And I'm like, no, I said, they definitely ain't going down that road. But where I was going with this is there's one point where they respond to go see Wesley Snipes' evil character, and he's using an information kiosk, and they show up, and he's got this little thing. He says, "Subject is there. What do I do?" It says, "In a firm voice, tell him to stop." It didn't work. What do I do now? Be even firmer and direct in your voice and tell him to stop, or else. That doesn't work. There is a time and a place for talking and resolving things that way. And I would love it if that would work, if we could handle things better. But this is not Star Trek. This is not Gene Roddenberry's idea of a utopian society where everybody works for the betterment of each other. I wish it was, but we are not boldly going anywhere right now. We are going into more trouble by going down that road. And when you hamstring people and their abilities to do that, whether it's you tell them they can't use force because they're told to step back, whether you're telling them that the rules of engagement are even worse now, or even in some aspects, it comes down to even hiring. I know there are places where, okay, they've got their quotas and this and that, and you better look in the mirror. You better think about what you say and do, because if you don't line up with a certain boxes that be checked, you're not going to get in there, and they're going to go with the lesser candidate. Because if you put them without names and without identifiers side by side, they're the lesser candidate, but they'll get hired because they have something that you don't overhear. And that's part of the appeasing everybody and doing all that. And I think that frustrates people more and more. That causes the strife and the turmoil, and then when you can't express yourself, you keep it bottled up, and then that leads to you know falling into the bad habits that what happened just as similarly as a post-traumatic event.
Right. Oftentimes we talk about post-traumatic stress as if it's just a diagnosis, and nothing happens before the diagnosis. So we're either okay or we're not, right? Is kind of the social model there. But what we miss is that there is 20 years, 30 years, 40 years in some cases of progression that happens long before we're even talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, we're talking about just behavioral shifts and the accumulation of stress and the accumulation of life experiences, and the effects and impact of horrible scheduling and lack of sleep and broken relationships and all these life things that happen to firefighters and police officers in more intense ways, but still the same ways as they happen to the general population. So what can we do to address the problem in the beginning? As a leader, what do you notice that you can do to change the outcomes from the beginning?
Well, I'm glad you stopped at the 40s part. I was really worrying you were going to start going into the 50s and longer. And yeah, yeah. So I appreciate that. Um, I think it comes back to, from a leader standpoint, that right from the beginning, you know, we got to make sure everyone knows in every capacity that you got to be human. There's a because of crappy television or otherwise, there is a cultural distortion that people in uniform do not have emotion. Yes, people in uniform have emotion when they're bad and they go off the rail, or back in my day we used to say when they go postal, or whatever you want to call it. Yes, then they're bad. But other than that, nope. You go down the road, there's that cop. He has no emotion. If a bad guy comes out, he's going to arrest him or he's going to save us all. You know, we don't perceive him to have emotion. Firemen are going to show up. Hey, there's the building's on fire. They're going to go in and they're going to pull out, two children, three rabbits, two chinchillas, and a German Shepherd, and they're going to be fine. And then they're going to get done, and then they're going to stand around and clean up. And they're going to take their big shiny trucks back and do it again. They don't think about the stress and the physical strain of going down that hallway, sucking the carpet to try to get cooler air, or knowing that, hey, you got to do a quick triage. That one is not going to make it, but we do know there's another one in this room we got to go by and keep going. Um, so what toll does that take on people? So I have, whether for bad or for good, have had new personnel probably every year for the last 11 years assigned to me, as they've graduated academies. So I've had to raise children there, if you will, each time. And that's one of the things I've personally tried to instill with them is, after every call, it's a review so that they learn from it and what they've done, and what they can do better, or what they really shined at. But also to let them know that, hey, yeah, this is going to happen. Yes, we're going to, okay, come in here, check their pulses, this and that. You're going to have to see this, and then check in with them again later. Be not only their leader, but be the counselor and advocate for them as well. If they're not doing too good, get them the help right away, but stay engaged with them. Don't sit there and push it off and say, "Nah, I don't." They'll figure it out. If they need something, they'll come to me. See that way too often, and that's something also that, I mean, we can write it down. You could write a bestseller on how to cope with it, and give it to every first responder you knew. But if they don't buy into it, if they don't believe in it, and they don't act on it, not going to happen. They're not going to do it. So we've got to start from the top, and then even in the private world, we got to stop keeping this stuff bottled up. We've got to learn how to express it in a healthy way and in a constructive way to get by it. Because then, when those people go from the private world to the you know to the life saving role of life, then they have those skills with them.
Well, and eventually there's a point when people who are in the life-saving part of life go back to the normal world. And that transition poses a lot of challenges too.
Yeah, it does, and regrettably, a lot of them don't turn out well. I know you and I have discussed this previously, about what that looks like, and there is a lot of transition from all walks, military and public safety, that have lost. They lose their way. They've lost some sort of identity, They've done something their entire life or their entire career, and now when they're done, they don't know where they fit in. And eventually the nightmares and the voices and the smells and all of that creep back in, and there's nobody around them that understands it. And it gets to the point where it's not that they want to end their life. They're just tired of hearing it, saying it, smelling it, and feeling that way. And that's something else. It's we also have to encourage and have people figure out how they're going to move on the next day, and then the next week. Yeah, two weeks off is great. And some people, are able to let their hair grow out and take a break for 2 weeks and then come back to work refreshed. Well, it'll feel like that in the beginning, but then 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you were ever out for surgery for a couple weeks, yeah, you know what that's like. Man, this is great. Oh, I still got to go back to work. Crap.
Right? I
You,
can't
you know
can't sit here any longer.
exactly. But when you're quote unquote forced to do that, that's what's different. I mean, I knew I had an old chief, and he said, "Don't ever retire at the end of the year." See, everybody always waits to Christmas. Oh, I'll work the end, get the Christmas bonus, and I'll leave. Well, what happens in January and February and March and April, depending on where you live? It's dark, it's dreary, it's cold in some places, and then you're alone. Instead of going in the morning and sitting at the firehouse going, "Damn, it's cold outside. I hope we don't go anywhere. Hey, we got chicken and rice today. We gonna have chili." No, now you're sitting at home, and you had that, your second cup of coffee. Those of us that remember these things, called newspapers, you read them, and then what do? You stare out the window, and it's gray and gloomy, and you don't have anything to do. You don't have a purpose. You don't have a direction, and then that carries on and sinks on you for months. So this guy, he retired in July, hooked the motorcycles up to an RV, grabbed a wife and a dog, drove all the way to the end of the Florida Keys, rode around for a while, came back up, and then got up back up to the mainland, got to the panhandle of Florida, and turned left. And they went that way until they were done, and they changed direction and did this and did that. And I'm just like, he's onto something. This he's got a plan. This is not a bad idea. Um, so finding that what's next, finding that transition piece is just as important as how we handle things that happen to us now, because that is something that's going to be happening to us when we move on.
So let's talk about risk assessment and informed consent is what I call it. But there seems to be a pattern of people who've had really bad childhoods, people who've had adverse childhood experiences, and uh, carry traumas with them. These are the people who choose helping professions. So, I mean, obviously, not always. I'm making some broad sweeping uh,
Uh,
statements here, but
True.
there's a tendency for people who have childhood trauma to want to fix the problems that led to their trauma in the first place, or to, in some other way, help other people to have better lives and better experiences. So with that comes a higher risk of post-traumatic stress symptoms, or having the challenges that not having proper relationship skills and not having proper coping strategies in place, and all of that. So coming from a similar background to what I do, we've talked a little bit about childhood sexual abuse and some of those challenges. What do you think? What do you think the impact is on bringing that with you as a new recruit?
And you're right, and I think that also it also goes to, why do people do what we do these days, and why are they in need, or why are they in need anymore? We don't really have the the young scrawny kid from Brooklyn who says, they're laying down their lives. I have, no right to do any less than them. Uh, and then they get injected with super soldier serum and they become Captain America. We don't have we don't really have that as much anymore. It's like they said, people don't talk like that anymore, even though some wish they would or some should. So yeah, you get somebody who has a childhood trauma. So let's say you get somebody who has a decent upbringing, has good family, everything is on the surface seems fine. You see them and you're like, hey, that's a nice person. That's a good kid. They're gonna go far. But you don't see the sexual abuse that they underwent, you know, by somebody else, whether it was a family or a family friend or whatever. And rather than make a stink because everybody told them they're such this good person and they keep it hidden. They don't say anything. They go through life and then start to realize that they've got somewhat of the hero complex. They don't like to see people get hurt. They don't like seeing people sad. So they start to become the best friend or the guy that people can always call or the girl that everybody talks to. You know, um, so they have a purpose. Even if it happens again, maybe 2 or 3 more times to them, they brush it away. They keep it hidden. They don't bring it out in public. They keep it locked in that box, and they think that they've got a handle on it. So then they continue to be the hero and help out, but there's something missing. The Yeah, while they're thanked for everything they do, that's the hey the mission comes first. We did it. They're fine. Okay, thank you. Bye. And then they go. And now our hero is left all alone. Well, they've got to find somebody else that needs help because if not, they're it's somewhat like the addiction cycle. At that point, they've got to find somebody to help to keep their self worth going, to feel that somebody cares about them in a positive way, and then eventually, that kind of fades away. There's not the people there that need help, or there are, but then you start getting into bigger issues. So now we're talking about you know people that may have been hit in a relationship, or someone who got hooked on drugs, or someone who had families fall apart or whatever. So now the hero steps in and is trying to help them. They do their little bit, then it moves on, and now they're stuck with the the fatigue from how they helped out is still weighing on them. And all back into that little box that they thought they had locked away, starting to rattle a little bit because it's seeing similarities. It's you know it's off gassing. It is it's the shadows are starting to creep and stalk at you, and then you start to feel like crap, and then you look for a way out. Then all of a sudden it starts leading towards you know negative negative actions and negative attitudes. Well, then they start staying out a little bit too late, start drinking a little bit too much, start smoking a little bit, a little bit more, start, you know, calling and hanging out with people you shouldn't be, you know, and then sit there and do that, but say, oh, let me find that avenue. Where can I get back to being this hero again? Because all of a sudden, then you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I need to be this hero again. So what do? Oh, hey, let me enlist. Let me go to the academy. Let me do this. I can be the hero again. Well, you haven't solved anything. All that stuff's still there. What did you do? You sat on it. You kept it at bay, and you didn't do anything. So you move on, and maybe things quiet down for a little bit. But then you start seeing things. You get a combat deployment. You go to a bad wreck. Uh, you make an arrest from somebody who shot a store clerk. How does that affect you? And I keep in mind, this is years later. You're a pillar in the community. You got a family, white picket fence, mortgage, pickup truck, minivan, dogs and cats, whatever, everything. And you're keeping all that stuff hidden inside still because you still got to look strong. You so then you start falling back on those bad habits again. You start saying, well, I got 5 hours, so I got to be home. Let me go get a drink. Let me go fuck two people at the bar, then I'll go home. Nobody will know. I'll feel a little bit better. I go home. Well, I don't realize that's an addiction. It's a whole addiction cycle. You need the coping mechanisms, and now you negative ones because that's all you learned on. And you fall in them. And then every time a trauma comes up, that's what you fall back on because that's what you know. It's instinctual, and it grows and grows and grows. So now not only are you dealing with those, but now because you are so stressed out, those emotions all start to intertwine. They start to overlap, and your whole purpose in the beginning from doing all of this was to help people because you didn't want anything to happen to them like it was happening to you. Now you realize that you're just doing it in a different way to somebody else. Your attitude and your actions are negative towards the people you care about. And so you get to the point where you're so conflicted and so overwhelmed that you don't know which ends up. So all you're doing is you're putting on that public face, that persona, that even that jovialness, if you will, and then in the shadows and the places that we don't talk about at parties or in public, we're dealing with internal hell. And so we either continue along that path until it destroys us, destroys our lives, and potentially ends them, or you hit rock bottom and realize that, hey, I got to do something. And you seek out whatever is necessary to get you out of it.
So what was your process when you recognized that you were having post-traumatic stress symptoms, when you realized that something had to change? What was your process for getting help?
Mine was by pure accident, or do we call it literally divine intervention? Um, Things were bad. Things were not going well. Um, headed for much much of a destruction in life. Potential divorce and broken family and this and that was looming. And I happened to be sitting in church at a Catholic mass, and this rather gruff priest at the time was up front, was speaking, and I maybe it's a good thing I don't remember exactly what the topic was or how it came up, but whatever it was, it just something hit me, something stirred inside a little bit, and I'm not talking jumping up and getting hit with the blazer, and now all of a sudden I can walk again, because I was crippled on TV, televangelist stuff. I'm not throwing religion at people. Everybody's got their right to belief and choose and all and how they do it. But it was a message that I heard, and it wasn't a faith based. It was just something that I heard that kind of stuck with me.
A
So
light bulb moment.
what's that?
A light bulb moment.
Well, maybe, kind of, I don't know, maybe it was a reflection off of my head right here or something. I don't know. But yeah, so I made arrangements to go speak with him. And I never met the guy before. Honestly, I wasn't even. Yeah, I'll admit, time I wasn't even Catholic, and I wasn't even a member of that church. So, um, went and sat down, and talked to him, and got in the room, and he sat down. And keep in mind, to give you an impression of this person, he was at the time was 60 something years old. Yes, he's a priest, but what you didn't know that underneath his robe and all that was solid muscle and rock and a guy who competed in fitness competitions. I mean, this is the equivalent of there has got to be you know a direct to video movie somewhere about the priest that kicks ass, and that would be this guy. Um, you know, so we sat down and you know, broke down telling my story and crying out for help and this and that and the other thing. And he sat there for a minute, um, and then I think the one comedic part to this when I think I knew that things were going to be okay was when he farted across from me, and then when he said, "Well, it sounds like you have fucked up a lot of things." So within a course of 30 seconds, I have had a priest fart and swear in front of me. Hmm. I'm TV never taught me that priests were like this. I was like, I'm sorry, what? And so that began a dialogue and a friendship that I never would have imagined. Um, the advice, the continued therapy, if you will, with him by being able to talk to him, um, finding out that we had a mutual acquaintance who said, they sat in that exact same chair and told just about the exact same story. Um, you know, there was this huge connection, but then also stuff that this priest had been through and in his life that he openly admits to his struggles with addiction and other things. Um, it was just something that really kind of you know changed my focus. And kind of brought back the reality. And that was the thing because yeah, it is rock bottom, and there are so many places that you can go on rock bottom. You can go left and continue on the path by yourself and just kind of muddle along for the rest of your life with what's left of it. You can go to the right and you can have a very short life, or you can try to go back up. And that's what ended up working for me. And it's not easy. you know um it takes you're never cured. And I think that's the other problem, that people think, oh, well, I've got issues, so I'm going to go and I'm going to get this, or I'm going to get that, I'm going to get a med, I'm going to talk to a person, I'm going to be cured, and I'll move on. You're never cured. You are never completely rid of what was ever there. You just learn how to control it before it controls you. You learn how to live with it in a state of detente, if you will, with a 38th parallel running through your brain. And then, if you are able, you then use your experiences to help others who may have been there. And and you continue on every day with it. And that it gives you drive, it gives you purpose. And in fact, I since then I have used my story and my experiences to help others. And that gives me purpose. That takes something that could be or could have been a tragedy and puts a positive spin on it.
Right. That's why we do the podcast, so people can recognize that they're not alone, but also so people that aren't in the industry or a helping profession can recognize that the humanity, can recognize the person behind the uniform. So, really interesting, a couple things you brought up. The importance of rapport of making a connection human to human instead of a connection professional to client
Mhm.
in that relationship. And the general mental health model is one of a power differential. It's the doctor tells the client or the patient what to do to fix the problem, right? There's this like lack of control and lack of participation in your own healing journey. And I hate that model. Like, like I don't think that model belongs in the first responder world. I think there's a level of peer support works because you're peers, because you're equals, because you can look at each other and share the stories face to face. So people often ask me what's more important, education or experience? And my response to that is neither. We shouldn't have to pick. Like we should have both. If you want someone to help you through the processes of understanding what's going on with your brain and what's going on with your body and what's going on with your behavior, that person has to understand what's happening with your brain and your body and your behavior. But also, they have to have the life experience to connect with you on that level of actually understanding where you're coming from.
Mm.
And I think both are absolutely crucial in the first responder mental wellness model of the future. I think we need to stop looking for the medical or mental health world as it stands right now, I guess the mechanism as it stands right now to save the day. I think we have to save each other. I think that's like our key to success is to create mental health professionals from our own populations.
Exactly. If we don't start developing ways or um, taking advantage of those that are willing to serve in that role to help others in that way, we're not going to be able to save anybody or to help anybody. We're to have a room full of good intentions, but with uh, you know, no answers on the other end.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. It's either on one extreme where we're going to make $1 million helping first responders. We're going to create the system and we're going to get it implemented in everybody's departments, and we're going to make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And we don't understand at all what first responders need. Or it's, oh man, I want to help, but the first thing that comes out of the mouth is, "Oh my gosh, how could you?" Or or that big huge eyes look of shock at the story, or worse, even tears.
Mhm.
Like there's nothing worse than a mental health professional crying when you tell them your story.
Well, the worst thing is, even the leadership positions or the convening authorities sometimes doesn't understand. So you take the first responders, they get it. But we work in a municipality and or we work for a government or we have, a council that oversees us. So they send somebody down and they're going to send somebody in there to teach you sensitivity training, or they're going to sit there and tell you what's right and what's wrong. So sit there and they get up in front of them. Nobody should ever make you feel that you're not worthy. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about how a workplace should be. You should be free to go and I don't know how it can, but use the restroom all on your own. Well, I pee next to him regularly. I go in the bathroom at the same time he does. You can't do that. Okay, so you should, you should have you know, the wherewithal. You should be able to have privacy when you do things, and to maintain yourselves. And I take a shower with that person. I've seen his ass. I said he's turned around and swung his dick at me. You can't say that. Number one, number two, you can't do that. So number three, you know,
We
if you
live in a locker room, dude.
if you're on shift work or whatever, you have to have a time to go to some place where you can rest and you can have somewhere. I said, well, he snores an awful lot, so I've gone in there and put a pillow on his face and tried to shut him up. But sometimes that doesn't work. So then what I do is I go in there and I lay on his bed naked and it makes him leave. And then they break down and they freak out. They throw their papers in the air. And I said, "What the hell are you people doing?" I said, "We work in a firehouse, lady. You have no concept of what we've done." And they've stopped doing that because have made the sensitivity trainer run screaming and yelling and left the facility because they couldn't handle what we were saying or how we were doing it. Um, yeah. So don't sit here and send some bean counter down there and expect them to understand that, you know, when that the comment of, you know, when we say something like, "Hey, you know, your dick is as small as a tic tac," and then somebody else says, "Well, yeah, that's why your mother's got fresh breath." That's us. That's how we're talking. That
That's
is
not sexual harassment.
no, that is the norm. You or if they cook a bad meal, we say, "Hey, this is fit for a king," and you whistle and go, "Here, king, wee, come here, buddy, come here, dog, come eat this." You know, yeah, we're ragging on you, but it's how we live. You
That's how you show love.
know, yeah, don't sit there and tell us that we can't do that, but again, that's how we cope and do things. So, and that goes back, long diatribe short. That goes back to why we need the people, like you said, from within that understand. I had a therapist, great guy, and he was former military, and uh, introduced me to the the therapy of EMDR. And if some of your listeners aren't familiar with it, the EMDR I did was light therapy, where it helps to take the traumas from left brain and moves them to the right brain, or vice versa, so that you don't deal with them in a emotional sense, but more of a rational sense. And I highly encourage it. I think it's a great tool. Um, we got along great. We talked sports. We swear this and that. It was that similar camaraderie. But he was in private practice. And that's where he was working. But then about 2 years into it, he was hemming and hawing, and he said, "I got to make a decision." The military wanted him back. They were trying to poach him to bring him back, specifically to help the special forces community with their traumas and their transitions to civilian world. And he said he was sorry, but he thinks he was going to have to go. I said, "Well, if you don't go, I'm going to kick your ass and make you go." I said, "That's not something you turn down." I said, "You got to go do this." I said, however you need to justify it to yourself, that's the kind of people that we need into doing it. Even similar to what you're doing here. I mean, you're giving a platform for people to talk about. You're not. This is not. Sitting out there with Dr. Phil or hamming it up with Steve Harvey. You're somebody who understands where we're coming from and what we're doing, and then you're allowing that voice to go out and hit others who need to hear it. So yeah, that's definitely what we need to do, and it needs to be for all of us who are in that realm that need to either get that help or to be able to offer it.
So before we close out today, what is your favorite quote, words of wisdom? What is your the thing you want to leave our folks with?
I don't know. Traditionally, my favorite quote for a very long time with my pessimist mind was, "Beware the fury of a patient man." But I don't think that really fits with something like this. Um, it's everything's relative. There was a quote one time that says, "Time has little to do with infinity and jelly donuts." Um, nothing is nothing is etched in stone. Nothing is solid, and there is no "this is how it's got to be" no win scenario. Um, everybody has a choice, and even if that choice goes one way and it's not the right one, you make another choice off of that and you come back up. Everything can be taken care of. May not be the way you like it, may not be the best way, but there is always a solution, and there's always an alternative. So don't stick yourself to one means and say, hey, this is how it's got to be. If you need help, it doesn't mean you have to sit there and deal with it. You can go get somebody to talk to. You can get help. If you feel that you're too far gone and you're a miserable, horrible person and you have a monster inside you, it doesn't mean that you can't fight that monster and lock him up. You know, you can if you will to do it.
I'm going to leave those words as they stand. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of Rise Up, Voices from the Frontlines. We're always looking for guests. Just message me if you think that you have a story that belongs on our show or you have a message that you want to get out there. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so at battle2be.org, BATTLE, the number 2, BE.org. Everything that we do is under our 501c3 nonprofit that serves those who serve country and community. So if you don't know what we do, go ahead and take a look at that website. I will put links down below for how you can connect with both of us. And if you have questions or comments, please put them below the podcast at your favorite podcast resource, and I will do my best to get answers to you. Thank you again so much for supporting this podcast and for standing with those who serve.